Today is April 15, a day that I will never forget. It's my dad's birthday, and believe it or not, my dad was an incredible man. He was ambitious, he was an overachiever, he was an intellect, and he worked hard to provide for his family. Now, I know that I've told you a bit about him, and you know him as the man who killed his wife, but there was so much more to my dad than what he became, a murderer. He was in fact admired by many people in the community, by neighbors, colleagues, relatives, and he, was a figure of an ideal man. But little did people know that he secretly abused his wife for years and years on end, finally leading up to the moment where he killed my mom and eventually killed himself. And why is it that abusers are people that you least expect? People who hide behind their luxurious cars, their careers, making it even harder for women to speak out because who will believe them? So today we are talking about how to spot an abuser. What are the characteristics of an abuser? And as you can see, today I'm standing outside the Phoenix Survival Center, which is a home doing incredible work in the community. And we want to help women with practical tools to help them assess their relationships. And if your relationship ticks all the boxes in today's episode, then unfortunately you are in an abusive relationship and you need help. But as well, only you can help yourself. Yet again, this is Bekezela.
Bekezela.
Joining us on today's episode is Trisha Pillay, an assistant at the Phoenix Survival Center, and today she explains what an abusive relationship is.
So basically, the Phoenix Survival Center, it is a home for abused, abandoned, and destitute women. These women have literally been thrown out of their homes. They have been abused to the core. And what we tend to do is actually involve them in society because they have now drawn themselves away from society. So we want to give them, for example, skills development, whether it's crocheting, knitting, activities to do during the day, a day out to the beach, whatever it is to keep their minds and themselves occupied so that in the long run, we know that we're helping them. This is therapy. My job basically goes from assisting Caroline Govender, the co-founder of the Phoenix Survival Center, in our day-to-day activities.
Before Trisha gives us the characteristics of an abusive relationship, we asked you what you think.
Abuse for me is, I think when one partner is has a lot of low self-esteem and is egotistical, and the only way to make themselves selves feel better is by putting down the person they claim to love, demeaning them, that makes them powerful because they have a hold on someone, they have a say over someone, they have control. I think abusers are control freaks because their mindset are just about them. It's not about anybody else. It's about their selfish reasons, wants, needs. I think it stems deeper than the person that you actually see in front of you. I actually think it comes back from some sort of event that triggered your childhood. That triggered in your childhood that because we as humans we're born pure. We get these behaviors from life because as a baby we're all innocent, and then life takes its toll, and then that's where you start to see changes in people. So yeah, definitely I think it's the ability to want to control someone, to try to hide your insecurities by being powerful over someone, so that makes the abuser feel more superior and more in control. I think we've all been in some sort of abusive relationship. I've never been in a physical one, but I'm sure when I think back that at some point in a relationship, one partner will be the sort of control freak or the one that wants to take charge, and sometimes that can also translate as being abusive. mentally, or trying to restrict your partner from doing certain things. I think that's definitely some sort of abuse, and as I said, it comes both ways. It can come from the male, it can come from the female, but most of the time it comes from us males. We have a huge problem with egos and self pity and self doubt. So. Yeah, I think a lot of abuse stems from those things.
Abuse, guys, wow. Abuse is disguised in so many ways. And I feel like it's getting harder and harder to track because you don't really know what it looks like anymore. It's in so many little pockets of things that, yeah, but not to veer off. I think in a space where we're talking relationships, professional or romantic, abuse happens emotionally, it happens intellectually, and that for me is the worst one that you can get, where you really mess up with someone's psychological soberness or sense of sturdiness, and that's the one that really just gets swept under the carpet because it develops and it becomes such a, yeah, it becomes one of the worst ones that you can experience, because if that one, goes underhand or underhanded, it becomes physical abuse. And therefore, I feel personally that intellectual abuse is most definitely one of the most dangerous ones that gets swept underneath.
I always say that with society, the norm is that a man has power over a woman. And that power has now taken itself to another level of the highest of levels. It could be the simple of things. Like, for example, when you talk about abuse, and let's go there first. When we talk about abuse, you're looking at just the physical aspect. I mean, anybody, if you had to throw the word abuse at them, the first thing that would come to mind is the physical aspect of it. That's what abuse is. But there's so many elements that fit into abuse. There's so many categories where abuse is divided into. Like, for example, a woman could be abused emotionally. Now, when a man loves you, or when you're in a relationship, obviously there needs to be love, there needs to be compassion, there needs to be caring, there needs to be peace. And for someone to scream at you, maybe they're calling you names, you stupid or you silly, they're making a comparison with you and other women, that is abuse. And many women feel that it's a norm because in the society that we live in, it's what we have become accustomed to. It's because we see it happening so many places that we believe that, you know what, it's normal, but it's not. How can you be in a relationship where you feel sad all the time, you silently going into your closet behind closed doors and you're crying your eyes out? That is not love. You need to really step back and you need to ask yourself, in any situation, is this what I really want? If you are in a situation and you feel you are unhappy about something, maybe you address your partner about it, and maybe he does not want to address the situation. You need to ask yourself, like maybe it could be, let's look at the aspect of physical abuse. Firstly, we know under the South African banner that is not on. In any country or any place that you go to, we know that that is not on. Abuse is not tolerated. So with the physical aspect, if you are being thrown around or if you get a slap, that is abuse. It is not normal for a person, especially your loved one, to lift up their hands to you. It's not normal. It is not acceptable. You are a woman of dignity. Carry yourself out in that manner. Carry out yourself in that way. The other aspect could be the element of the emotional and the psychological. Now that's where the name calling and the screaming and the shouting comes in.
Well, I never knew that my mother was in an abusive relationship. Now, taking into consideration what an abusive relationship truly is, because we always think of abuse from a physical perspective, whereas abuse can be financial and emotional. And I realized that not only was my mother physically abused, but she was also financially and emotionally abused. My mom didn't have friends. She did not have a social life. She wasn't allowed to go anywhere. As a result, we were not allowed to go anywhere. I remember growing up, and our childhood friends know this. We were not allowed to go anywhere. We never attended any school functions, be it a social event at school. And for the functions that we did attend, it was a big deal. It was a big deal. I can literally remember or name the functions that we attended, because my dad just never believed in us attending school functions. For what? He never believed in us visiting our neighbor's house. For what? My dad, if ever he saw any one of us standing in the yard without any aim, standing aimlessly, he'd call you. I remember this one time I was standing in the yard, cannot remember what I was doing, and I heard my dad calling me, and he said, "What are you doing outside?" And I said, "Nothing." He said, "Then get back inside the house." What if I was just getting some fresh air? So we were not allowed to visit our neighbors. My mom didn't have any friends. My mom had to ask for permission to go visit her mother, her own family, and that was just a big deal on its own. So my mom was really cut out, and the only place that she could go to, honestly, was work. She could only go to work. And taking into consideration the aspect of financial abuse, I think that a fair majority or a fair number of women are financially abused and they don't even know it. Because when Trisha explains what financial abuse is, I think some women really are financially abused, where you work hard for your money but you can't even spend it. And I think many women can relate to that. You work hard for your money, but come month end, you've bought groceries, you've paid your bills, you've paid for school fees, you've done everything else, and you possibly can't even remember the last time you bought yourself a lovely dress.
The main thing about any aspect of abuse, being it physical, emotional, and psychological, as well as financial, is that the word needs to get out there. You need to understand that abuse is not just a physical thing. It is something that you can just feel. It is a mental thing. You don't only just feel it. You can also think about it. That leads to depression. And when you get depressed, you're putting yourself in a very, very bad predicament. Think about your children. Think about your family. Now, in order for this to be eliminated or to draw the line, it's so important that society steps in. Picture this, a woman who is sitting at home being abused, let's say the physical aspect. She screams out for help, gasping for breath, asking someone to help her. I have seen this on many occasions where the neighbors step back and say, "No, that is a husband and wife problem." Let me tell you something. It is not a husband and wife problem. It is also your problem. Imagine that woman dying in the hands of her husband, which has happened so many times before. How much more do we have to emphasize that we are our brother's keeper? We are our sister's keeper. How many times do we have to emphasize that we have a place, we have a responsibility in society? Would it hurt to pick up the phone and call the police to let them know that this is what's happening? You can be anonymous. You don't have to give out your personal information and nobody would know. But yet people step back. They don't want to get involved because they say, "No, today they're fighting. Tomorrow they can be back to normal." But what if she may never open her eyes again? What if she may end up in a situation where she's lying in a hospital bed fighting for her life? What happens to the kids that she has? What happens to that baby who is waiting for her? So listen, people, it is up to us to take on the responsibility to help these people. They are sitting in silence because they are afraid. They don't know where to go. It is left to us, society, to step in and take a stand.
In fact, on March 1 last year, 28-year-old Denver McQueen Marimuthu killed his wife Roxanne Tantoni after stabbing her repeatedly in their rented apartment. The couple tied the knot in December 2020 and had been married for less than 3 months. The couple started having arguments a few months before the unfortunate killing. The accused allegedly assaulted his in-laws, punching his father-in-law, and pushed his mother-in-law to the ground a month after the wedding. On the unfortunate day of the killing, Denver repeatedly stabbed his wife with a kitchen knife, stole her car, and left it stranded shortly after. Denver met Roxanne at a church in Tongaat, just outside Durban, where he was drawn to her after she'd shared a testimony. Days before Roxanne was killed, she was threatened that she would be leaving in a body bag. Marimuthu has been in custody for just over a year following 2 failed bail applications. He recently returned from Fort Napier in Pietermaritzburg, where he spent 8 weeks undergoing a psychiatric evaluation.
Just from a space of romantic or professional or personal relationships, abuse has a lot to do with your behaviors. It's a person's character, it's a person's upbringing, it's a person's personal traumatic experience that's being portrayed in many ways. You know, some people use their platform, some people use their title, some people use a lot of what I call their might or their muscle to instill whatever agenda of abuse they're trying to get out there. You know, it's just something that sticks out of in my term is of course like of a domestic kind of abuse, where in a household where there's a pressure or pressured expectation from a man to be provider and so on and so forth, in a space where he's unable to do that effective or efficiently. He will often tend to, use what I call intimidation.
My mom wasn't allowed to go to church. We were not allowed to go to church. My dad cut us off from going to church, and for his own reasons. So many things happened in my parents' relationship, and it just reminds me of the scripture, do not be unequally yoked. That's what happened. And I think what sparked the conflict in their relationship or the abuse was their different beliefs. Maybe, I don't know, I don't have the answers. That's why we're on this journey. We want to find out why domestic violence is happening. Why are people being abused? And so, I don't know, but they shared different religious views. And my mom was a believer. She was saved. My dad wasn't. He was not saved. He lived on an alternative lifestyle, as they call it. I'm just going to leave it there. And so he did not believe in going to church. And therefore, he did not want us to go to church. And there would be times where, he wanted to perform certain rituals that obviously my mom did not believe in. And he felt that in order for a certain ritual to go well, we would have to stay home and not go to church. It was a periodic thing. It was sporadic in that there were times where he'd say, okay, now you can go to church. And then when he feels like, okay, church is coming in the way of his rituals, then he'd say, okay, stop. Okay, then we'd maybe stop for like 3 months, 6 months, up until my mom would say, oh no, I am going to church. Nobody's going to tell me not to go to church. And on some days, I remember we'd wake up in the morning, we'll be dressed and ready to go to church. And then my mom would look for her car keys and she wouldn't find them. My dad would hide her car keys if ever he didn't want her to go anywhere.
Bekezela. I really have to say that the Bekezela journey has been an eye-opening one for me. I thought I knew what gender-based violence was, and I just realized I had it all wrong. I think one of the things that has been really interesting to me thus far is what men's take on gender-based violence is. And I've been repeatedly encountering men saying, but you are looking at it from the wrong lens. Why are you only addressing the female side? When are you going to address us as males? We also get abused. So hopefully we'll be able to tap into that narrative as well, because as much as we are on a journey to empower women, we'd also like to empower the men. Zozi Tunzi once said, we need to address the perpetrators as well. So men, we would like to catch us next week, Thursday at 6:30 only here on Melissa Global Media. And of course, if you have a gender-based violence experience or story that you'd like to share with us, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email to Bekezela at melissaglobalmedia.co.za. Till next week then, God bless. Mwah.